Actually, I wanted to thank Julie about the last film, because sort of listening from what has been said today, it was all, I always had this image about, it's all so calm, they're out here in Canada and doing this nice weaving and planting. Sort of, it's, you know, it's sort of, it's a nice, I've been brought up in the north of Germany, so I do know that. Suddenly with the film, I thought, yeah, that's fashion. We are now entering fashion. I think we're leaving the textile part, we're entering fashion now. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Good. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself. I'm a trained fashion designer. I'm working in fashion, and I confess I just use textile. Although I'm coming from an old textile city from the north of Germany, which is today actually not on that stage anymore like you have in Halifax, it disappeared. My experience with textile is sort of limited to the initial design process of textiles. It's just focused more on the design process of fashion collections and interior design. But I always had the privilege of working for international fashion companies to develop fabrics for them as well, in particular my position as head of design at Kenzo in Paris. Before I take you on a little journey into fashion, and you might be surprised a little bit about it because it will be taking a little curve in that. I like to think I like to take the advantage, as being a last speaker for today, to thank the organizer for such a wonderful event, an international exchange platform, in order to reflect the future of textile and fashion. As busy textile and fashion professionalists and committed educators, we all know how much work it is to organize such a conference, next to continue with academia. So therefore, I think we all should do a big applause to Robin, Francis, and Gary. Now, I've been given the topic ethic fashion, and honestly, I was reading the email and I thought, oh mon Dieu, okay, let's deal with that at some point. What actually is that? But it was good, because actually it was forcing me a little bit to think about the terms, and I would love to take you on that journey into it. Now, you see, I have the impression when I was studying fashion in the 80s, there was already a green wave going on. And I'm quite surprised, sort of, actually, it's still an issue, it's going on, it seems to be changing terminology. So there's something about fair fashion, about clean fashion, about green fashion, we had that today as well. There's something about ecological fashion, sustainable fashion, and now I'm supposed to talk about ethical fashion. So the question is now, so what is an ethical fashion compared to all the other terms? Is there a difference? Is it just an equivalent? Or is it just something marketing is doing with that to keep the subject going? Yeah, to keep it interesting, because we're getting bored by hearing things all over again. Well, what we can do is now, I did something. I followed the attitude of my students concerning ethical fashion. I thought, I asked Google. That's what we all love as educators when students are doing this. So when we look at we are coming up very quickly to something which is actually the Ethical Fashion Show, which has been founded in 2004 in Paris by Sibylle Klose. And actually, the fair is placed in the way that it's always during the Prêt-à-porter du luxe, which is actually now at its end in Paris. So it's always end of September, beginning of October. And you might know that that is a very specific timing as well for that fair, because the Fashion Week in Paris is the most important one in the entire circle, because we start with New York, we have Milano, we have London, and then we have Milano, and then we have Paris. All the buyers and the journalists are ordering in Paris. So it's always good, everybody's there, that they started to have that event in Paris. So the positioning just in the calendar was quite important. Now, what happened as well, which is not a sort of surprise. Okay. Now, to participate in that fair, because it might help us to have a definition about that. What do you have to fulfill? What is, when you try to enter that fair, what are the requirements of understanding of being ethical in your fashion collection? So we can go through that quickly. I was just, you have to fulfill 70% of the criteria. So it's about aspect of ecological aspect, social aspect, transparency aspect. We had a couple of things today. So just ecological aiming, to use only renewable resources. I leave you reading that through. Avoidance of waste, avoidance of toxic substance, following a concept of reduce, reuse, recycling, support of research and innovation. Now, towards the social aspects, we are aiming at something Barbara was talking about as well, about payment and living wages, about respect of intellectual property, support of handicraft and traditional skills, and then we move on to transparency aspect, aim at clear communication of sustainability strategy, and knowing all suppliers involved in the manufacture. You know, the bigger you're getting, the more different places you have, the more complicated it gets, especially when you have to work with sub-suppliers. And support of cooperation that creates social and environmental benefits. So that seems to be actually, I thought, brilliant. Yeah, I could stop here my talk, because that seems to be the definition of it. But I don't want to, not at that point. There has been an interesting shift coming up, because I was just mentioning that the Ethical Fashion Show in Paris got founded in 2004, and a branch of it, a new little sister, has been founded in Berlin in 2012. So the first one was at the beginning of March in 2012. The reason the last one has been in July, so sort of quite recent, July 2013, with enlarging numbers of exhibitors from over 15 nations. We had 73 exhibitors, plus 30, which are going to the green showroom, which is on the premium section of the fair. So 2 different locations, but it all comes together. So it's about 103 companies, clothing collections, who are placing themselves on that level. A lot of small labels of young designers, based local, but as well big designers like Hess Natur and Waschberg, who's sort of a little bit familiar with the German structure and their standards. Hess Natur is quite a big company. Now, the only thing you might say, oh great, the entire thing is growing, so it's really customers aware of. Yeah, but it's a question where, because at the same time, for the moment, the Ethical Fashion Show in Paris is, I don't want to say it's closing down, it's postponed, with giving no date, but they do not know when will be the next fair because of a lack of interest in Paris, not in Berlin. So, my topic, back to it. So, what is ethical fashion? Now, do the criteria we have seen given by the fair, by the organizers, actually answer the question? Could. I would like to separate the two. I would like to take you on a journey. I've been asked to talk about ethical fashion, and I actually want to separate that into what is ethical and what is fashion, and then bringing it back together. Now, what is ethical and when is ethical? Asking these questions, I'm risking to fail. We are entering not only a highly philosophical area now, but a controversial discourse as well. Therefore, I already apologized for having to stay on the rough and on the surface. Following the Cambridge Dictionary of Philosophy, the terminology ethics is commonly used interchangeably with morality. And sometimes it is used more narrowly to mean the moral principles of particular traditions or group or individuals. Therefore, ethics is also considered as moral philosophy. So we're dealing with morality. And is one of the various fields in philosophy. It interrogates different aspects of morality and moral behavior. Moral or ethnic behavior refers and is applying to many areas which are currently on public focus. So you will see, I will try to enlarge a little bit of perspective, because when we are talking about moral behavior, ethic behavior, we are looking at the wide range of different areas like politics, business, science, and here I'm talking about biology, like synthetic biology, about bioengineering, genetics. I'm talking about military, I'm talking about the financing section, public section. So, in order to avoid confusion, I like to continue with the word morality instead of ethics for the moment, although both are very linked and very close to. So I try to simplify that a little bit. I just want to focus on two groups. The one is the normative morality, where everything is sort of quite actually clear. There are clear regulations, there's a clear agreement that actually things are really right or wrong what we are doing. There's a descriptive morality where we actually can't claim that it's right or wrong. It's a group, refers to cultural values, codes, conduct of social mores, and it's not global. It belongs to a small group. So that's important to know because it's linked with the definition of what we are looking at. Now, it seems to be when we go to the normative, we are all agreeing on that. Yes, there is something wrong in terms of morality, in terms of ethics and fashion. So when we look at the normative morality, we could, in consequences, assume that there's a true moral statement to follow and to report objective moral facts. It seems to be that we agree worldwide on a moral standard, conditions, and behavior. You see that here with the clean clothing campaign criticizing the jeans workers' condition in China. Same, the clean clothing campaign is criticizing the wages situation from H&M production places. So it's something which has been functioning worldwide. We all agree on that if you are working in that, there has been a minimum standard. So do we have ethical standards then? And how could we measure them? Now, we try to measure them at some point. I put together a couple of labels which actually, when you buy a product, when you buy a garment, when you buy an accessory or furniture or anything like that, would guarantees you that it's a sort of green, ethical, what else ever. The only problem is I just realized, I did my research a bit yesterday, your labels here in the north of America look quite different from mine, I'm used to. So when you're going to Europe, are you sure that you know what you buy, the right one? And am I sure now what I do? So you see, the thing is, we try to measure, we label it, but at the end of the day, it's not really functioning. You need to have a huge knowledge about what is functioning. Now, I put on a couple of German labels because as a German, although I'm living in Paris, I've been always asked about, the Germans are so strict. So everybody who wants to sell something in Germany needs to pass the tax, or something sustainable needs to pass the tax, it's Textiles Vertrauens, the tax 100 standard, which is quite high. Certain conditions about a garment and the production and the fibers and everything. So we already have now we try as well, to standardize. I'm talking about standardize, labeling it so everybody's knowing, what you have in front of you, because you can't get into details every time. Now I copy-paste the ecological aspect about, yes, we're trying to set a frame of ecological aspect. They are coming from the fair. What I found is quite interesting, the way they were formulating it. I don't know whether you are aware of that. It's about aim to use. I think we all have tried to aim something. The question is whether we reach the aim. There's avoidance of what we all try to avoid, the waste. So you see, that is something where I'm doubting a little bit whether we can work with strict criteria. Now, descriptive morality, those who are the groups, yes, we do have that. We have that in little groups. I think especially the people are coming together here for the conference. They are quite in the same understanding about where we should go. A microorganism and nations, in particular within Europe, very interesting. We are very small, different nations, how the British people behave toward that topic, how the Germans behave towards the topic, and how the French behave towards the topic. Different standard, different behaviors. Now, what is fashion and when is fashion? First of all, please be aware of that fashion does not mean clothing right away. Fashion normally, it's just, the English word is just coming from façon, which means as well façon être, it's just the way. And from the European point of view, it's like mode, moda. It's coming from Latin, and it's just modus, and just say the way it is. It's just the way it is. It's an attitude. We automatically link that attitude with clothing. Now, the awareness, I want to make you aware of that fashion started far earlier, because we have fashion attitudes, we have fashion in names. Have you ever realized that? That suddenly you're sort of Susan's appearing and Thomas appearing, and then there's no Thomas anymore, and then suddenly it's all, there's this very strange waves suddenly, so there seems to be a fashion as well in names. There are fashion in slangs, who have little kids at home. Suddenly when they come from school, they come home with words. You say, okay, what is that now? So that is something we should be aware of, because it's far more. Fashion itself, façon, modus, modi, which means fashion itself, it's an autopoietic system, and it's far bigger. And it's a system which is in a certain way, by the way it's functioning, conflicting with sustainability. There are different positionings in there when we talk about fast fashion and we talk about slow fashion, when we talk about classics. Now, to understand fashion, you need to understand that fashion is always aiming to be something special. When we're talking about fashion, and we're not talking about clothing, we're talking about fashion, becoming a fashion label, following a fashion trend. It always means that it's not reachable for everybody. If everybody could reach something, the definition of an ideal is it's limited. It's only a small group who's able to reach it. If everybody could reach, it's boring. So that means that we have a suicide character of fashion, and the circle is going on and on and on. We can criticize it. We can say, you know, that's not sustainable. That is whatever, but that is the autopoietic system of fashion. Because something started in the avant-garde, it's developing, it's coming to the mass market, and then the avant-garde is not interested in that. So fashion is killing itself. Now, in the when we look at the interesting, yeah, empty, okay. When we look at fashion in general in the 20th century, we actually have, that might be here, well, you know, when we look at how fashion worked till the mid of the 20th century, it's about hierarchy, it's about restriction, exclusiveness, it's about status, it's about classes, you know. So actually, there has been already in that moral issues in that. So there is something about, you know, what part of body could be seen. It was already a moral issue when Chanel was raising the hemline, yeah, above the ankle. It was a moral issue. So the topic of fashion and morality has been always a part of fashion. Or think about switching gender. I just want to make you aware of that. The topic of fashion, morality, and ethic has been always there. It's now shifting. We have now another platform. Now, or think about Chanel pretending another status when she was actually inventing the fake jewelry. What's the drama? Either you have real jewelry and you can afford them, or you can't afford them and you don't have any jewelry. What happened in the 21st century now? We have a huge change in fashion, which means it's about a self-chosen image. It's about personal affinities, you know, where you are your personal affinities within for music, friends, jobs, political, religious values. So actually, it's not clear anymore where you are. It's not clear anymore where it's going. We're talking as well about the hybrid customer, where it's really difficult to... And looking at that means that the fashion... I need to hurry up. Trying to do my best. The fashion idol is linked to a self-chosen image and more related to personal affinities, and it's defined by personal and individual interest. So we have a remarkable shift, and it's important for design, towards style and look. Now, style and look, what happened now? October last year, for spring, summer this year, the Birkenstock is back. So we already had that in the 90s. Now we can say, wonderful, yeah, sustainable awareness to do something good for your body. Do you really think that was the reason why it's coming back to fashion? Because people are thinking, you know, I should put more healthy shoes on. Actually, the high heels, you know, for my bones, that's not the best. That's not the way fashion is functioning in all of that. So actually, if you want to buy that version, which has been presented on the catwalk by Celine, you see that you can spend 1,000 actually Canadian dollars on that. If you want, it's a mink-lined bejeweled Birkenstock. You might get the original a little bit cheaper. Now, this is what I was saying. So what is the ethical thinking in that fashion behind that when you have a healthy, comfortable shoe, or is it more about a desirable fashion item or a cool accessory? Two things now. When we look at the terminology about ethical fashion, we can look at ethical fashion in terms of what I was saying, just the way you behave, the way it's reflecting time, so it's zeitgeist, or about for ethical fashion business. Now, looking for the moment just at the zeitgeist, so enlarging a little bit the view on that, which is important as well when you look at that as a designer and where you want to go, is there's a huge shift going on for the moment, the way we live. We are entering the century, the area of charity, sharing a lot. Hasn't been done before. Sharing clothes, getting clothes back. It's about co-working, crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, open sources, open space, open innovation. Yeah, we talk even about online communism, because it's about sharing an online, and the new digital generation is doing that because they're working with an app. Yeah, people won't buy a hammer anymore if you just need 3 times a year hammer. There are new systems about borrowing it, lending it. That's quite interesting, because that is the area we make fashion for. We want to make fashion. We want to make that the clothing becomes fashion, so it needs to aim in there. Work lifestyle. We are going not to entrepreneur, we're going to intrapreneur. We're going to job crafting, handcrafting, upcycling, downsizing, flexibility, mobility, occupy society. It's less about leisure. It's less about leisure. It's more about being occupied and being busy. And storytelling, narrative design. Everybody wants to do it, because it seems to be, at least at fashion, being sustainable. We see here that I think we all agree that there's a sort of, every designer collection we present as well in Paris, nearly everybody has this sort of what I call an alibi item in that, saying that is my green garment, so I'm on the track. Or that might not serve the initial idea. Armani's doing it as well. Now we're coming to something interesting, because when we talk about something is ethical, it's implicated right away there's something not ethical, unethical. So we have the T-shirt of H&M, basic organic cotton, great, ethical, produced in Bangladesh. We all have been informed about the conditions over there. So is that non-ethical item or not? How would you define that? Could you define that? Could you say that's ethical fashion, that's not ethical fashion? Big companies. I'm working very closely with Hugo Boss, and they still have difficulties to really create an entire range, although they would be able to do it. They do small items because they feel that their customers does not, and we're talking about a German brand, about the German awareness of ecology, is just quite high. They still do not do it because they feel that it's not demanded by the customer, which I thought is quite interesting. Now, what about this? Waste off. Incredible expensive, haute couture, prêt-à-porter de luxe in Paris. Now we have with La Collection Zero, la collection artisanale of Martin Margiela. So, you might know that the Collection Artisanale is a recycling collection. Now, actually, it's supposed to be ethical fashion. But the house of Margiela would never say, they would never marketing as ethical fashion. So, is it now pure ethical fashion? We do not know anything about the production. They're not telling us because they don't want to label it. Do we know that where it is? Is it all a question of perspective? Now, another way where it's really difficult to define whether it's ethical or not is we have this wonderful development. I don't know whether you heard about that, about the biolace, done by Carole Collier at the Centre St. Martin's in London, Master Course Future Textiles. I don't know whether you see that. She managed to manipulate plants, and for example, a strawberry plant in that way, that the races are growing together in a way it becomes a lace. That's a totally new development on the market now. So actually, with genetic recoding a plant, we can go for a new way of textile production. Great, we can save sources. We can save, it's very ethical. So it's something we can really produce on a genetic way. Are you sure that you want to go down the path about manipulating genetics? Do you see that it's not easy to positioning yourself in all of that? Another nice example I just wanted to enlarge here. I don't know whether you read that book. I could recommend it to you really highly, about T.C. Boyle. Actually, he was writing a novel about the dilemma of a human being, of humanity versus nature. And it's about an animal rights activist who's actually going in a certain situation. They both are right. They both are right to defend the territory. It's about an animal issue in a wood. But you see, it's either you have to kill the animals, and then it's against the animal rights activist, or you have to prepare the ground differently, but then it's affecting the environment. So what are you doing? I think that novel reflects where we are for the moment. And there isn't any right answer. There's just something about you finding your positioning in all of that. Both sides in that book, both sides claim to think and act ethical from their point of view. Now, how to sew ethical fashion now? There will be a lot, the new currency, we talk about a new currency now out there, where we talk about trust design, social design, and storytelling. Storytelling in terms of narrative design, narrative presentation, and representation. You know, try to get the emotion and the history in there, what you are doing. And it's not only by labeling and saying, oh, look, you can read it. It's by getting this emotion into the design process as well. How could Nova Scotia t-shirt tell a story? I hope he has a couple of students here. So how would you do it? Just via the design. I'm not talking about some electronic code somewhere, you know, and sort of click. I think we all have to shift our thinking of that and making it larger again. We already had now on the fashion panel talking about paradigm shift and, you know, thinking from another angle. So there is something about, for the new young generation, to visionize and to visualize new possibilities of get on the next new level. Now, we could talk about two levels. Yeah, textile, production, we learned a lot of that is for the moment has been done by the ethical fashion. But we need to talk about as well about the design process and about that the design, which is actually reflecting emotion, needs to reflect the same story. Just to give you an idea about how important emotions are in design, I don't know whether you know about that. With total security, you can drive a car which costs €3,000 or 4,500 Canadian dollars. Everything what you pay more, think about a Porsche, you pay for the emotion. So it's very, and then on top of it, I just throw it at you, you might want to think about it. Very often, women buy in an emotional way clothing, men buy rational way clothing, but in emotional way cars, and then the ladies are buying in a rational way cars. For the ladies, it needs to be very practical, the man feeling not dressed very well in a car. So the issue with the emotional design, it's true, it's all over and needs to be handled, needs to be dealt with. So fashion is about emotion, design is about emotion. Now, and what could we do? Deciding whether we're doing ethical fashion or not, whether we do belong to the group or not. You see, at the end of the day, we have problems really to measure that. So I'm actually encourage you and invite you to go back to Immanuel Kant, to the categorical imperative, and saying actually act only according to that maxim. whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law without contradiction. Now, we talked about we need to change. Barbara, I'm on board. Where is she? I'm on board about what we have to do now with the industry and with all of that. But you were talking about how to change them. Now, I'm not quite sure whether we should talk about change. We should talk about transformation. Because change is always sort of, it wouldn't work with fashion because it's too emotional from my point of view. So in a certain way, we can't solve the problem on that level. It's Einstein, it's not me who was saying that. On that level where it has been created, we need to find a new level. Yes, we can argue, we can claim about you shouldn't wear that jacket, yeah, because of pollution, because of waste, because of that, because it's too cheap, and because of when you have a more sustainable made one, it lasts longer. But that's all about, it's a little bit the situation that when you switch on the news, it's all about negative, and it's all about disasters, and it's all about if you don't, it's not really motivating. And the problem is that we are now, I'm not talking about clothing anymore, we want to enter fashion. So we're getting in a high emotional area, so actually we need to seduct. And I think we just need to be creative to find new ideas how to seduct. And I want to show you a little sample at the end. It's a little film, how that could be. It's not something out of fashion, but it shows you how is it possible. So there's nothing about arguing. I think it's more about ethical design thinking and the focus of resourcefulness, resources, and I'm talking about human resources as well. And could you imagine that we might be able to change behavior or transform behavior by fun? Wouldn't that be great? Everybody wants to dress up, having fun. That's, one of the motto of fashion. Well, there has been a project in 2009, a competition, and I just want to show you one of the examples how to change people's Thank you very much.